God is saying, will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. Well, now, wait a minute. What do you mean God will be with me in trouble? He's supposed to keep me away from trouble, a few verses back.
But I want to dive into another psalm, just about 9 psalms later, after Psalm 82, Mike. It's
where you're going here.
Yeah, it's Psalm 91, because Christians saying, look, Psalm 91 says that God's going to protect us from plagues like this, from the coronavirus and other things. I'm just going to read a few verses because we don't have time to read the whole thing. But I'm reading from the NIV, the nearly inspired version. And here's what it says. It says, he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. Some translations say plague. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. In his faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by the day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. And he goes on to say, basically, God's going to protect you. That really seems, taking a literal interpretation of that the Christians out there right now, Dr. Heiser, who are saying that God's going to protect us from this plague, they seem to be right. Why are they not right? Or how do you interpret that passage?
Yeah, I would say that the first thing that might be helpful is to keep reading the psalm, because when you hit verse 15, I'm reading out of the ESV, which I don't have a neat little ditty for the acronym there, but it says when he calls to me, I will answer.
It's the especially spiritual version.
Especially spiritual. Okay.
There you go. Okay.
So, yeah, what the verse says, when he calls to me, the person in view calling on God, I will answer him. God is saying, will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. Well, now, wait a minute. What do you mean God will be with me in trouble? He's supposed to keep me away from trouble, a few verses back. Again, it's a misreading to think that nothing bad, would ever happen to believers. I mean, Jesus told us to expect suffering. So and Jesus did know Psalm 91, trust me, because this is the psalm Satan quotes to him in their confrontation in the wilderness, which is actually an interpretive key to the whole thing. But, if you look up the language of the psalm elsewhere, sheltering language, refuge language and whatnot, you're going to see that, first of all, the trouble described is quite broad. It can really be, from anything harmful or painful. And in most of those other places, and I would almost venture to say all of them, along with verse 15 in this one, the idea is that when bad things do happen to you, the Lord will be there. And he will rescue you, in a way that, again, may not expect, or something that we hope for or do expect. But ultimately, the Lord is going to be with us in trouble and in suffering. And Psalm 91 is not a sort of an outlier or a contradictory point to the mountain of other passages in Scripture that talk about believers suffering and the Lord's help, and the Lord bringing something positive out of suffering directly on behalf of believers and on behalf of what he wants to accomplish. So I think we need to be really careful, just on a very basic level, to take this psalm, compare its language to other psalms, and again, keep reading the psalm so that we don't, take it out of its own immediate, context.